When a cold wind blows, it chills you to the bone. But there's nothing in nature that freezes your heart like years of being alone. If being means a way of life, he'll practice and rehearse. And all that work is paying off, 'cause Scrooge is getting worse. Every day, in every way, Scrooge is getting worse. Yes, folks, Muppet's Christmas Carol. Goodness me, hello and welcome back to another episode where today I am so pleased to be talking to you about my favourite Christmas movie. Indeed, in this house, Christmas is not yet fully here until we have seen the Muppet's Christmas Carol. For some people, it's the Coca-Cola advert. I don't know why, but for some reason it is, with the holidays are coming, and that truck arriving on the TV. But for me, and for my lovely wife, and for most people, most reasonable people that I know, Muppet's Christmas Carol is one of those harbingers of the season, and it is just excellent. It is simply magnificent, and I have watched this film every Christmas for as long as I can remember. Now, of course, I started watching it on VHS, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but today, and at the moment, we have to rely on the DVD version of the film, and it starts out magnificently with this not the largest, the most impressive set, but a very detailed rendition of Victorian London. So the sort of London that we imagine Charles Dickens was writing about. A slightly quaint, slightly idealistic London, but nonetheless London just teeming with details, where we have someone opening the door, knocking someone off the windowsill to throw their chamber pot out of the window. We have mice who live in little holes, and then they have their lives going. We have talking vegetables, and we have choirs of children. No, 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 no. And crucially, we have at the beginning of the movie the Great Gonzo as Charles Dickens, which I never questioned, oddly enough. The Great Gonzo is the character in the Muppets who no one quite knows what on earth he is, and he's trying to find himself in that respect through his wandering. He's like a thespian, he's a performer, he's a frustrated artist, and in that sense he's perfect to play Charles Dickens. He's of course accompanied by Rizzo the Rat, and together they introduce the film and the tone of the movie wonderfully, and they're also an excellent counterbalance to what is to come next, in so much as they are sort of comic relief. Rizzo mocks Gonzo's omnipotence as the author and narrator of the story, and Rizzo has some wonderful moments, for example hopping back and forth through that fence to get his jelly beans when he's that he does the weird thing of having to climb over the fence and then falls and lands and hurts himself, but then just hops back through to get his jelly beans back, and Charles Dickens is like, what? Oh, Gonzo's like, what are you doing? And when he freezes and he has and Gonzo smashes Rizzo the Rat as an icicle to release him from the ice. It's just perfect. So you have this sort of the narrator and his comic relief sidekick, and then in comes Michael Caine as Scrooge. The pace at which he walks, the rhythm of that cane on the cobbles, dum 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 dum, when the cold wind blows, it's just perfect. He comes in and you just believe it, because some performances of Scrooge, I think like Albert Finney's Scrooge was just, he was over the top and all sort of scrunched up, and he I know what he was trying to do. He was trying to physically portray Scrooge's corrupted soul, the fact that he had hunched and hello, ooh, I love money, and then Patrick Stewart's Scrooge, he's just a really grumpy Captain Picard in so many ways. But Michael Caine's Scrooge is wonderful, because I mean Caine is from London for a start. I think he understands the attitude, but there's also something about his delivery of the character which is human. He's a damaged, hurt human being, but also he interacts with the puppets beautifully. There isn't that weird tension that you get in some of the other Muppets films where they just don't quite know what to do. They don't quite know how to marry the puppets and the real world. In this instance, everything's contained in this beautifully detailed world. And of course, Scrooge makes his way to the office. We have Gonzo and Rizzo the Rat follow him, and we get to meet Kermit as Bob Cratchit. Of course, Kermit as Bob Cratchit is just perfect. And him and his work associates, the other rats, are terrified of being sacked by a very grumpy Scrooge. How would you like to be suddenly unemployed? And everyone, they just make Ireland in the sun. Hooray! When they're complaining about, can we just have some more coal on the fire? It's perfect. In comes Scrooge's nephew, and of course we all know the story. He's trying to get his uncle to be jolly, and his uncle is not jolly. They should better get on and die and reduce their surplus population, all this sort of thing. And we have Beaker and his associate coming in and collecting for charity. And I love Beaker. Beaker is such a wonderful, wonderful Muppet anyway. But in this film, he's perfect. He's horrified at Scrooge's attitude and leaves. And we'll come back to Beaker in a bit. Then we get the rabbit knocking on the door, and poor Scrooge, you really feel that Scrooge is just like, just stop it. He's just fed up of being hassled about Christmas. And the rabbit's singing a Christmas carol. Scrooge opens the door, slams the door, opens the door again. The rabbit goes, expecting maybe to get some money or something. And Scrooge grabs a holly wreath and just throws it at the rabbit and slams the door again. And it's just magnificent. And you're in for the ride. And again, you're not questioning it. It doesn't feel like anything other than a wonderful little world that they've created. Now, in the quiet of the night, of course, Scrooge goes home, and he is visited by Jacob and Robert Marley, played by the two grumpy men from the Muppets, and played wonderfully. These guys are perfect as Scrooge's old business associates, and also as well, because they are who they are. They're not remotely sort of actually. I suppose sorry for what they've done. They still take great pleasure in. Do you remember that time when we kicked out all the orphans at Christmas? Oh yes, they had their teddy bears standing in the snow. They love it, but they are warning Scrooge that they are paying a price for their revelry in human misery. Again, Michael Caine's performance is brilliant. There's more of gravy than of grave about you. All these classic lines that Dickens wrote. And then we are visited by the first ghost, the ghost of Christmas Past, who is creepy. Probably the creepiest ghost. In so much as the third ghost is scary, the first ghost is really creepy. It's a floating child, wonderfully rendered as a puppet, but also obviously with computer effect. With various effects being applied. It's sort of semi-transparent, and we are transported back through time to Scrooge's childhood, where he's being taught by the eagle, the eagle from the Muppets, who is my favourite moment in that, when he's at the school. He goes, "Now then, you will go off and you will become a businessman. You will learn about business. That is the American way." And then Charles Gonzo steps in and says, "Oh, that is the British way." And of course, at this point in Scrooge's past, we see him meeting Belle at at Fuzzy-Wig's Christmas party. Animal is playing the drums. My favourite Muppet is there. I'm so pleased he's in the movie. And then we get a moment when sadly Scrooge and Belle break apart. We see it's like a later Christmas when he's promised to marry her, but the money hasn't quite matured as he wanted, and for him, he's not ready to get married yet. And you can sort of see he wants to provide the best for Belle, but Belle is convinced that he's more in love with money and profit than he is with her. And at this point, on the VHS, on the video, there's a song which is not on the DVD. And this is because the DVD is the theatrical release. And I didn't know this as a kid, but the VHS is essentially the director's cut of the movie, which included a song called "The Love Is Gone." The love is gone, the love is gone. And it's so important because it's actually echoed at the end of the film. When Scrooge is sort of healed, as it were, as a human being, they sing a song which is "The Love We Found." The love we found, the love we found. And it acts as a counterpoint, and it reminds you of the moment when Scrooge really was damaged and when he shut himself off from the world. It's perfect, and as a kid I understood and got that, and as an adult I yearn for that, because on the DVD the song is missing. It's such a shame, because really all we see is Belle walk off, and then it cuts to the next ghost, as it were. The next ghost, of course, being the ghost of Christmas Present. Come on in and know me better, man. And that ghost is probably my favourite of the three ghosts. Probably my favourite puppet, actually, in the whole film, because he's a full-size, larger-than-life puppet of this great big red-headed, just tremendous spirit, this being who you want to hang out with, you want to party with. That's the point of him. And again, this is the thing, this is what gets me in the mood for Christmas. He is, for me, Christmas Present. He is magnificent. And he's also brilliant because he sort of solves the problem that's present in the other renditions of this story, where you have a man who's dressed slightly awkwardly, you know, with a holly wreath on his head and some sort of robe. You know, he doesn't start out huge as he does, I think, in the book, but also obviously in Muppet's Christmas Carol. He's almost so big he can't fit into the room. He's like, come on in, know me better, man. And in other versions, it just looks a bit weird. He doesn't quite work. But here, because he's a puppet, and because he is this sort of great big, huge being, it's just perfect. He's a bounteous creature. And as we're taken through Christmas Present, we see so much joy, and there's so much what they call sympathetic movement in the puppet. So when his head moves, for example, his beard and his hair wafts. It's just superb. We get a lovely dance number in the street where everyone's enjoying Christmas morning, and and then of course we see Bob Cratchit at home with his family. He's been to the Penguin Christmas ice skating party the night before, which is superb, and he's coming home with Tiny Tim to Mrs. Cratchit, of course portrayed by the wonderful Miss Piggy. And again, it's the best version. It's just the best version, because Tiny Tim as a baby frog, or as a small frog, is better, in my opinion, than any human Tiny Tim you will ever see. It is just as simple as that. He is just cuter, more earnest, and you can totally see how he starts to melt Scrooge's heart. Whereas in often, he's just a cute, they just cast a boy who's kind of, cutish or whatever in films. As a frog, he works wonderfully well. Miss Piggy is brilliant. I'll give Scrooge a piece of my mind. and of course her daughters as little sort of mirrors of her, and also and the sons being little mirrors of Kermit, also is wonderful. Now, of course, eventually Christmas Present has to pass on, and he disappears in a little cloud of lights, and we get the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, who is terrifying. And at this point, even Gonzo, even Charles Dickens and Rizzo the Rat have to sort of leave. They say, sorry guys, this is just too scary, we'll see you at the end, and they duck out, because the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is really genuinely quite scary. In other versions, I really appreciate, for example, the Bill Murray Scrooged version of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. That television, that faceless entity that can show Bill Murray's Scrooge what's going to happen, using the TV, but also in that sense acting as a mirror, a reflection of Scrooge. It's that I love that. And that works really well in that film. But in this one, he's just a silent entity. He looks like death, with the cloak, the hood, and no face at all, just very long arms that he uses to point to things. And we go through these series of visions, which is, again, so familiar to us all, but also rendered, in this instance, in a very Muppet way. For example, it's a spider who is taking delivery of Scrooge's bedclothes and this kind of thing. Oh, it's still warm, Mrs. Jones. Oh, this kind of thing. And it's, again, just like Gonzo being Charles Dickens, I never questioned it. This idea of a giant spider. But it's perfect. He is, in that sense, he is being a parasite. It's like he's got this web that he's mastering, and he's bringing these things towards himself. It works thematically in the film. And you see Scrooge, he's melted in so much as by Tiny Tim, and then he comes to feel such regret when he sees, for example, the gentleman who he used to work with, like the two pigs. Sort of, I just love the pigs, because at the beginning of the film they're like, "Oh, that was a lovely breakfast. What should we do now? Let's have lunch." Yeah. But he sees the pigs who are sort of talking about, "Oh well, the food was good at the funeral," this kind of thing, at least. And of course, we come to that moment where the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come points inevitably to Scrooge's grave. And Michael Caine's performance as he breaks down in front of the grave, wiping the snow off the gravestone, and he knows this is his grave. He knows this is his future. He's desperate to avoid it. It's magnificent. It just works. This is the most emotionally effective version of this story that I've seen. Again, other than reading the book itself, it is simply magnificent. And then, of course, the next morning, Scrooge is awake. The robes of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come are actually his bed sheets, and he's like, "Oh, they're here! I'm here! I'm alive! They did it in one night. Of course they could. They're the ghosts. They can do anything they want." He opens the door, and who's downstairs? Then of course it's the rabbit. The rabbit who he threw the holly wreath at earlier in the film. "You boy, go and get that goose that's 3 times your size." we're gonna deliver it to Bob, and as they're marching along through the streets, it's a beautiful end to the film. It wraps it up so wonderfully. It is of course massively cheesy, but again, oddly, I think less cheesy than some of the human renditions, all human cast versions of this film that I've seen. When he sort of donates lots of money to Beaker and his friend's charity, Beaker gives him a scarf, and Scrooge is like, "For me? Oh, thank you." And Beaker's like, and so wonderful. And then at the end we have the song. We have "The love we found, the love we found." When he's sort of he's dropped in on his nephew and played some of those games that he saw them playing earlier in the film. Drops off some presents for them, all the while singing. And so the film comes to its crescendo, ends on such a high, such warmth, such humanity, and Michael Caine's slightly creepy, happy performance as well. The fact that people are sort of at least initially a bit like, okay. It's magnificent. It is. I defy you to watch this film and not come out of it completely ready for Christmas. It is just superb, and of course, I would love to be able to watch the full film on DVD or even Blu-ray. If they ever release a Blu-ray, I will get a Blu-ray player just to watch the full director's cut of this movie. I just hope that Disney sees the error of their ways, because that song is so important for the theme of Scrooge and him finding his way back to being a rounded, warm, full human being. This film, guys, is just the best. And if you haven't watched it yet, I could not more strongly recommend it. Just watch it, and you'll be ready for Christmas. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Anyway, guys, hopefully you're getting in the mood for Christmas. I'm certainly almost there, and in the next couple of days we'll be watching the Muppet Christmas Carol, and then I will be ready. My body will be ready for Christmas. As ever, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.